Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Pella Windows Postgame Show. And let me first of all say this. Good morning to you as we come to you from the field here at the Superdome in New Orleans, where the Dogs have gotten themselves a big win in the Sugar Bowl against the Baylor Bears. 26-14 is the final score and the big story. And you better believe that everybody was talking about this in the Georgia locker room. We had a chance to speak to many coaches and players a moment ago. The performance of George Pickens, especially in the first half, a night where he finished with 12 catches, and was just really a force to be reckoned with all night long. Pickens, who's shown flashes of his talent all season long, tonight showed a lot more than flashes. I think he really, demonstrated that he's one of the premier young receivers in this sport, and absolutely a major, major name to know as the calendar turns to 2020 and we start to think about the 2020 season. George Pickens will be among the chief headlines in college football next season. But tonight was not only about celebrating the exploits of Pickens and his athleticism, it was also about saying goodbye to a crop of Georgia seniors that we know are going to play their last game, a crop of Georgia juniors who could possibly have played their last game. And there is no doubt a lot of emotion expressed with the Georgia players we had a chance to speak to. Now, you get a chance to see and hear these interviews tomorrow morning as part of Dog Nation Daily Live, also once again from New Orleans before we make our way back to the state of Georgia. But I can tell you, in having, talked to Monty Rice and his feelings about the fact that he knows that Tay Crowder has played his last game in a Georgia uniform. We had a chance to talk on the field immediately after the game to Rodrigo Blankenship, who also was quite emotional about the fact that he's played his last game in a Georgia uniform. So many guys said, Richard LeCount, we had a chance to speak to him about this. They wanted to go out in a big way, on a strong note for these guys who've connected that bond together. We talked to Tyler Simmons about this. I asked Simmons directly. I said, "What will you remember about your career when you think back on your time at Georgia? How will you think about it?" And he said, first and foremost, before you get to anything about on-field results or things that he's done in his own career, he said, "I've made over 100 brothers." And it's sometimes in football things like that can sound a little bit like a cliche and the kind of thing that players say because they're supposed to say it, but when you stand next to a Georgia player who's saying that after a game like this, and when you have watched them go through what they have gone through, not just the games that we all see either in the stadium or on television, but the intensity of the practices, the intensity of the off-season regimen. These guys really put it out there and put their bodies on the line for Georgia football, and they develop a bond with each other through that. And celebrating this win today, both on the field, in that locker room, and really all around the Superdome, that connection they forged with each other was certainly seemingly tantamount in their mind as they went through all of this. So we're celebrating tonight a big win for the Dogs. I got my Mardi Gras style beads on. New Orleans going to be having a good time here. It's late, but I'm sure there's plenty of Georgia revelers out there making their way towards the French Quarter right now. Well, let's take a lot of your comments on both Facebook and YouTube, give you a chance to react to what you saw. I will remind you that all of this made possible by Pella Window and Door, the Pella Window Postgame Show. Couple ways for you to get in touch with them to find out how they can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. And listen, wintertime, I know it's cold back in Georgia. You don't want that energy escaping out of your house. You want to save money, potentially, on your energy bills by installing those doors and windows to help keep all the energy, all that heat, all that good stuff exactly where it's supposed to be. So a couple ways for you to get in touch. You can find Pella Window and Door of Georgia online at PellaBranch.com. That's PellaBranch.com. A great way to go and get an appointment scheduled. Or you can also give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. The number, once again, 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. All right, let's pop over here. Let's let some folks talk about their own feelings about Georgia's win tonight over Baylor, what you saw from George Pickens, what you saw, once again, from a very stingy Georgia defense. Monty Rice making it clear to me after the game that Georgia did want to come out and play big defensively, knowing that the last time we saw the Dogs in that SEC championship lost LSU. Not the best night for Georgia defensively. They wanted to get that bad taste out of their mouths, and so tonight was a step towards being able to do just that. So that's what Rice and some of the Georgia players had to say. How about your feelings on this? Let's start on Facebook here, and we'll go to YouTube after that. Give you a chance to react to Georgia's win over Baylor, 26-14 here in the Sugar Bowl for the second consecutive season. Georgia was back in New Orleans, but the finish to this one and the conclusion of the 2019 season, very different than the conclusion to the 2018 season was a year ago. An exciting time where Georgia fans get a chance to build some momentum going into next season. The 2020 calendar year, then first day of a new decade, starting pretty well here for the Georgia Bulldogs. Kimberly Cox says, proud to be a dog. Had me stressed at first, not going to lie. And Kimberly, I think a lot of Georgia fans probably know exactly how you feel about that. Cassandra Green says, good luck to the seniors that are leaving. And no doubt, Cassandra, that's a big part of this storyline. Those seniors who've played their final game for Georgia and some of the juniors who've maybe played their final game for Georgia. And there's obviously a lot of well wishes going out to them as they step into future endeavors. For some, it will be the NFL. And for some guys who played their final game, maybe their next venture doesn't involve football anymore. And that's obviously a big step to make when you play football for the final time. And that's a big part of all of this, too. And so we do send them well wishes. And congratulations on great, thrilling Georgia careers. And obviously big-time thoughts about what comes next there. I think that's well said on your part. Lottie Lauderdale saluting Malik Herring, Azeez Ojulari. Yeah, I thought the Georgia defensive front tonight really set the tone well. Ojulari was a huge part of that. Malik Herring there, too. So great to see that on both those fronts. Jason Barrett says, if Jake Fromm doesn't return, what does the outlook look for Georgia quarterback? So I didn't get a chance to talk to Fromm after the game. I know he was in the regular press conference room. We were talking to some different Georgia players off to the side. But for the most part, every guy we did speak to kind of towed that same line of not ready to make that kind of announcement yet in terms of their future. I guess Jake Fromm, I'm presuming, is much the same way there in that regard. And I think for Georgia, obviously, if Jake Fromm were to make the decision to leave to go to the NFL, I think there's some chance that might be the case. Maybe slightly more likely that he comes back for a senior season. But if he were to leave, I think that changes things pretty dramatically for Georgia. I don't believe that Georgia would want to go into next season with a quarterback competition that only involves guys who really haven't played before. Dwan Mathis, presuming he's healthy, after having dealt with the recovery from a surgery all year this year. Carson Beck, a highly rated freshman, but nonetheless still a freshman. I think that Georgia would be looking to add some experience into that quarterback mix if it were to lose Jake Fromm. But obviously, I think the first and foremost part of all of that is waiting to find out what Jake Fromm is going to do. And it could be that we don't have to wait too long to hear that from him or Richard LeCounte or DeAndre Swift or any of the others. But for tonight, at least the ones we talked to Swift about this, we talked to LeCounte about this. Their feeling was they wanted to celebrate a win and spend some time deliberating over their final choice and then making an announcement after that. Drew Roman brings up a really good point. We don't want to turn this completely into a recruiting show because we got a couple days over the next couple days where we'll be having recruiting. But as Drew Roman points out, Brock Vandegrift, who is from the Athens area and an Oklahoma commit, at least up until today, he starts off 2020 by decommitting from the Sooners. So that'll be a name to watch for Georgia for the class of 2021. Obviously, think about Caleb Williams there in that regard, too, a quarterback that Georgia's gotten pretty deep down the road with. But Vandegrift's decommitment was certainly noticed by a lot of folks here in New Orleans. I can promise you that, myself included. Joey Smiley says that Monty Rice had a nice game as well. I thought Monty really did. And I think that Monty's one of those guys that, I mean, he's really emerged as a leader for Georgia, both in terms of, being a mouthpiece for this team after games, but also for being a real factor for this team in games. There are a lot of guys who, and listen, no one obsesses over the 5-star this and the 5-star that kind of more than I do, but there are a lot of guys who've left those recruiting rankings in the past, and Rice is certainly one of those, that he's just a better player than the recruiting rankings would have said, not because the recruiting rankings necessarily got it wrong, just because some guys just find a way to find another gear once they get to the college level. Rice deserves a ton of credit for being able to do just that. Lloyd Dog on YouTube says Malik Herring had a heck of a game, really did. Philo Beto, good to hear from him, says that Monty Rice, Richard LeCounte will have be great leaders on another contender. If they leave, we'll have some big growing pains knowing that Georgia plays Alabama in September. I think it's not too early to start thinking about that Alabama game in September, frankly. And selfishly, I really, really hope that Georgia has that senior leadership that Richard LeCounte can provide, that Monty Rice can provide. I hope they do come back. You may be following along, and you know that Alabama has found out it's going to get its linebacker Dylan Moses back next season. Moses spent this year injured and not playing. He's announced that he's going to return for senior season. There's been some online chatter today that maybe Tua Tagovailoa might surprise some folks and do the same thing. I'll believe that when I see it, although it has certainly been talked about a lot today. But obviously, with rosters as we understand them now, these would be seniors for 2020 for Alabama and for Georgia. How many of them come back, and which team is deeper, more experienced, more talented when that game takes place at Bryant-Denny Stadium in September. As I said before, you let one season in, we start thinking about the next one, and it's not too early to start thinking about that for sure here tonight on our Pella Windows Postgame Show. Jonathan Kane says, don't forget about Georgia's number one weapon, Wild Thing Rodrigo. And, yeah, on this field tonight, we had a chance to speak to Rodrigo Blankenship immediately after it was over. And, one of the things I asked him is, and, Blankenship's a pretty big sports fan. He's kind of a, sort of a media-savvy person all the way around. He wants to be, a sports broadcaster. And, I talked to him about game-winning field goal against Notre Dame in 2017. Field goal at the end of the half at the Rose Bowl. I said, as a sort of a student of college football history, do you allow yourself to appreciate the fact that you have really put your signature and stamp on some of the big moments for Georgia, certainly in the Kirby Smart era, but also if you just want to look at the last couple of decades, Blankenship field goals were a part of some really big, very memorable Georgia wins. And thankfully, Rodrigo is willing to appreciate that and willing to kind of sort of see his role in all of that. Now, he also said that some of that kind of stuff kind of comes once the career really is done, and once you realize that you're not putting that Georgia uniform on again, then you start maybe thinking a little bit more deeply about that. But Blankenship, as you might expect, was, I think, pretty emotional all the way around about the fact that, you just get used to doing the same thing every single day. Think about, me showing up to do a show like this, or you doing whatever it is that you do on a daily basis. For college football players, they get into that same rhythm and routine, but after 4 years, or in Blankenship's case, that fifth year, you get tapped on the shoulder and said, sorry, young man, the eligibility has now run out. You've got to move on to the next phase of your life. And that's a really weird, really tough thing for a young man to have to deal with. But no doubt Blankenship handled his career with class and dignity, and he's a huge fan favorite and someone that will be celebrated forever in a Georgia uniform. I did kind of sort of half kiddingly, half seriously ask him about what it's like to hear that huge ovation that comes at the every time his name was announced as a starter at Sanford Stadium, and he had some interesting things to say about that. We'll do a lot of these video interviews tomorrow morning as part of Dog Nation Daily here live from New Orleans. I want to take more time to get your comments. That's really what this show is going to be dominated by, your comments, your thoughts about the game here on our Pella Windows Postgame Show. In fact, more of those right now. Brian McPhail says, if we get 3 more really good receivers next year, watch out. Will be difficult for good defense to double-team George Pickens. Yeah, listen. When you think about Jermaine Burton, I know that Burton tweeted tonight that he's just ready to be out there. He was enjoying the show that George Pickens was putting on. You better believe that. Obviously, Arian Smith brings the one thing that Georgia doesn't really have a lot of right now, which is that blazing speed. So you start thinking about that, and you had a Justin Robinson into this mix and a Marcus Rosemary into this mix. When you think about that kind of talent going along with what Pickens showed tonight, and obviously, Dominic Blaylock coming back from injury, and, there's a lot of names to think about here, but with what Pickens showed tonight, and the potential that Georgia adds more receivers to go along with him, it becomes very easy to imagine that this position group that we've had some questions about, that this much maligned group, it's very easy to see a path forward for them, one that gets way better, way sooner than maybe some people thought. George Pickens tonight, you cannot say enough about it. I know that y'all think that I'm obviously a huge fan of Pickens. What is it the kids like to say, a stan? Like at this point in time, that's kind of what I've become for Pickens. I do get all that. But all the hype that I contributed to for Pickens, I have to say, I feel like tonight it was proven that it was all justified. Remember, it's almost like exactly a year ago, we were talking about Pickens over and over and over and over again. Well, when you go on a Sugar Bowl field against a Matt Rule defense that's quite good, you get yourself 12 catches, 11 of them, I think, came in the first half. When you're doing that kind of work, all that hype we were contributing to back at the beginning of last year, that's all, I think, proven to be pretty justified there on that front. All right, a few more YouTube comments, then we'll go to a Facebook. Let's see what else is going on here. Shane Wilkerson says, Matt Luke coached up a patchwork offensive line pretty well tonight. If Rom has time, he can make some of the throws, and several times Pickens was wide open. Yeah, I think you give a lot of credit here. This is a Baylor front that can be, pretty difficult to deal with, partly because of, the odd way in which they kind of stack their defenders. And, at times tonight, Baylor had some success getting a pass rush going, but overall, I thought it was a pretty effective night for the Georgia offensive line with really only 2 linemen playing in the spot they've played in all season long. You had Solomon Kinley at left guard. You had Trey Hill at center. Other than that, you had guys moving around, being in different spots than they've been in for most of the season, or in Warren Erickson's case, just in the game for the first time, really. And so I thought for Matt Luke to be able to step in on the fly and do what he did and for these guys to sort of step together and gel together the way they did. I thought that was all very nice and a great thing to see for sure. More of your comments here on YouTube, and then we'll go to Facebook after that. Mr. Farrell on the subject of Zach Evans saying that he's fast. Saw him last night in the All-American Challenge, but Tank Bigsby strong. So I will say this. We drove to New Orleans, so tomorrow morning we're leaving out of here, and then we're going to get home and be in Atlanta in our Dog Nation World Headquarters studios, hopefully in time for Darnell Washington to make his announcement, Zach Evans to make his announcement. After being in New Orleans here today, we'll be back in Atlanta tomorrow, and we'll be ready to cover all of that as it goes down. So I'm very, y'all, I know you know, those of you who are with us on a regular basis, very excited about the future of Georgia football. In fact, there were some, folks around here tonight, lots of winks and nods in the direction of the fact that it could be a very good week for Georgia. Could be a very good week for Georgia. Win over Baylor, couple big-time announcements tomorrow could go the Dogs' way. Keely Ringo on Saturday. This could be a pretty good week to be a Dog, all things being equal. DWB, boy, mentioned this on YouTube, and I'm glad that he's bringing this up because I should have said this before now. A pretty nice night all the way around for Zamir White. Now, a lot of this was not really spectacular necessarily. It was a little bit more workmanlike, but what do you end up averaging? About 5 yards a carry on the evening? I think that's a very important thing for 2020. I don't want to make the whole show about looking ahead to next season because for a lot of these guys who played their last game, this was an emotional night for them. But admittedly, there's always another season to worry about. And for Georgia in 2020, you start thinking about that one pretty soon. As excited as Georgia fans justifiably should be about Kendall Milton, and as hopeful as Georgia fans are that a guy like Zach Evans joins the fold for UGA, I still think Zamir White is, on paper, the most important running back for Georgia next season. Doesn't mean he's going to be the best. We see freshmen step in and cut their place in line and take playing time away from people all the time. That could happen for Milton or Evans if Evans comes to Georgia in comparison to Zamir White or James Cook or anybody like that. That could happen. But I'm saying that because experience matters, and we saw so many instances during the 2019 season why that's true, because experience matters, the fact that White's got some experience makes him to start next season Georgia's most important running back. The fact that he gets to go into next season knowing that he had himself a big game tonight in a game in which Georgia could not call upon DeAndre Swift because Swift was dealing with an injury. James Cook, who was supposed to be a factor tonight, was also dealing with his own injury, and I haven't really heard the Kirby Smart press conference yet, so I'm not sure what Smart has said in terms of what it was that kept Cook out of this game. But because those guys were taken off the field, there was more put on Kenny McIntosh's shoulders, a lot more put on Zamir White's shoulders. And I thought that White did a pretty good job of answering that challenge tonight, and I'm glad that came up in our comments section. We'll have more of your comments, including a little bit more on Facebook here in a moment, on what is our Pella Windows Postgame Show, live from the Superdome in New Orleans, where Georgia's gotten a win over Baylor here in the Sugar Bowl here tonight. Of course, it's all brought to you by our friends at Pella Window and Door, and they can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. And listen to this great offer that Pella Window and Doors has got for you right now. You can get up to 40% off qualifying installations or 0% APR for 48 months. But you've got to act right now. That deal is only good through January the 9th. So make sure you take advantage of that while you can. A couple different ways to get in touch online at PellaBranch.com. The website, once again, PellaBranch.com, or give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. By the way, how tired are some of y'all? Are you sleepy? Are you working tomorrow morning? Is it 2 a.m. here or is it 1 a.m. here? So it's 1 a.m. where we are right now. It's 2 a.m. if you're watching in Georgia, and most of you are. It's 2 a.m. where you are. So if you're still going with us and rolling strong, we certainly appreciate that. We'll try to make good use of your time here all the way around, including back here on Facebook here just for a moment. James Crump's on the subject of Darnell Washington, who we will hear from tomorrow, says that he's already signed, hasn't announced. Same with Zach Evans. Yes, they've both signed letters of intent, and tomorrow we'll find out if that intent is towards Georgia. Obviously, UGA fans are feeling pretty good about that right now. So we will be back in Atlanta before the day is done tomorrow, covering that live on video. It's crazy that the 2020 calendar year has started with such a bang here in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, and then a whole bunch of recruiting there tomorrow on that. Jill Cobb Burke says, I've got respect for Baylor and their coach. Yeah, I do too. I think that Matt Rule's a pretty sharp coach. And the way that Baylor, after kind of being dominated in the first half, started the third quarter by marching down the field, putting together a good long drive. What, about 75 yards worth of total offense on the drive, and 3 minutes of time off the clock. Pretty impressive drive, all things being equal, for a Georgia team that's typically pretty good in third quarters to halftime adjustments defensively. Georgia's known for doing those, but Baylor made a nice adjustment offensively to kind of march down the field and score. They deserve some credit for that. Now, the talent advantage between the talent gap between these two programs favoring Georgia, it's a vast talent advantage. We saw plenty of examples of that tonight. Georgia missing so many key contributors from the season for this game, and yet still obviously the much more talented team compared to Baylor. Matt Rule's a good coach, but you give me a good coach with inferior talent, and more often than not, you're going to see results like the ones that unfolded here tonight. I think that's probably true. Joey Smiley says Kenny McIntosh is underrated. I'm thinking he's got good vision. So I've said this before, and I'll keep saying this. The one thing about McIntosh that has impressed me this season when we've gotten a chance to see him, and I've seen him some during practice, but also all of us have seen him during games from time to time, including a little bit more tonight. The one thing about McIntosh is he's more athletic than I realized that he was. Now, I don't know how he's going to compare next year to guys who are coming in like Milton and like, I'm going to presume, Evans, although we'll have to find out officially about that tomorrow. I don't know how McIntosh compares to them necessarily. I do think experience matters. I think he's gotten some. That's the kind of thing he can use to his advantage. So I don't really know what his place in the running back pecking order is next season, but athletically, he brings more to the table than maybe his high school profile would have suggested was a possibility for him. He does have that ability to make people miss from time to time, and I think that's something that you like to see. And so McIntosh having a bright future at Georgia, I certainly think the possibility that exists, that's true. In some ways, he's a complete running back, right? I mean, he seems to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got the physicality when needed, but he's also got a little bit of wiggle to him, too. So there's a lot to like about Kenny McIntosh. I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. Jill Dean Prescott says, so happy for Fromm and Coley. They both needed a good game. And, yeah, had a chance to see Coley a little bit on the field after the game. And he was obviously celebrating and feeling pretty good about that, and he deserves to. I thought it was a well-called game. We've obviously had our airing of grievances when it comes to certain things with the Georgia offense throughout the season, but really, for the most part, over the course of the final third of the season, certainly the final quarter of the season, I think the issue for me offensively was more results-based than any kind of specific criticism of, Coley in particular. I don't think you had much room to gripe with many of the play calls really at all. Tonight was certainly an example of that, a way to finish the season on a kind of a strong note, kind of a high note, a nice thing to be able to see if you're a UGA fan. A little bit more of your comments here on both Facebook and YouTube. David Edwards says, BA is going to need some strong coffee for Dog Nation Daily tomorrow. So, honestly, I'm a robot. I can just sort of do this, just wind me up. I'll talk now. I'll wake up in the morning. I'll talk again. I'll be on late tomorrow night again. We'll talk then. But there is a certain point when it kind of compounds. Somewhere around Saturday afternoon after Keely Ringo has made his announcement one way or another, that's usually the moment where I kind of do the faceplant thing after that. So as long as there's some action to cover, I'm going to be right there in the middle of it and having a good time doing it. But there will be a moment when the tank runs out of gas. I was off all last week. I got to tell you, that seems like 12 years ago. That's like the Christmas week and kind of putting my feet up and watching, Christmas movies with my kids and, eating cookies and drinking hot chocolate. That seems like a long time ago. It feels like we've been in New Orleans for 12 years. But nonetheless, Robert Reynolds says he's got to be at work at 8 a.m. and it's 2 o'clock here. Yeah, honestly, I really do. I'll joke about it a little bit, but the fact that the fourth quarter of this game doesn't start until midnight Eastern time, we got to do better than this. I mean, it's the two teams who are playing slow as molasses. That's part of the problem. There was, about a 2-minute bank of commercials every 5 minutes, the best I could tell. We can't, I got a young son. My daughter could care less. She's not watching anyway. But my son would like to watch this game. Fourth quarter starting at midnight, that's not good for some of you that have kids that kind of, want to follow college football. I hate to be 1,000 years old here, but that's just late. That is, it's late now. But that was late even then when the fourth quarter came around. So we got some more By the way, Michael Carvel, our producer back in our Dog Nation World Headquarters studio, says the Dog Nation Daily starts in 8 hours. That's not the kind of thing I want to be thinking about right now. So let's do this. Let's get a few more of your comments, and we'll get ready to kind of let all of you get to bed and kind of figure out where we are for tomorrow. A lot of interviews on the show tomorrow. I can't even rattle them all back. We talked to Matt Luke. That was fun. We'll show you Matt Luke on Dog Nation Daily tomorrow. So we had a nice little run of interviews, and we'll show, for the most part, that's what our show tomorrow is going to be, just kind of recapping some of what some folks had to say tonight. So we'll be busy doing all of that. But for now, a little more on our Pella Window Postgame Show. Your comments. I'll do another run on YouTube, another run on Facebook, and then after that, I'm going to let y'all go to bed. I'm sure y'all are tired of hearing me talk anyway. Super Hecky says Fromm has better stats than almost every other Georgia quarterback in history. Look it up. And, yeah, listen, Jake Fromm has been Georgia's quarterback for 3 years, and most of that time has been a stellar level of play. At times this year, admittedly, I think Fromm will be the first to tell you that some of the performance left a little something to be desired. Even he, I think, was a little dissatisfied with his own performance. He talked this week about some of the fundamental things that he let slide. Footwork, for instance. That was one of the things that he maybe wasn't completely happy with. But a guy who's been an effective quarterback before can and likely will be an effective quarterback again. And listen, when Fromm makes his announcement, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm my fingers crossed that Jake Fromm says, I'm coming back for one more go at this thing as a senior year. Because I think you saw tonight both the ability of Jake Fromm to deliver the football to George Pickens and how just energized this Georgia offense looks when it has a go-to weapon like Pickens. But I think you also saw a little more chemistry between the two. How much better can he even get, right? I mean, I think you saw some opportunities for even more out there that can be exploited. So, listen, I hope that Jake Fromm's back for senior year. I hope we get a chance to hear from him on that pretty soon. Cedric Foster says Fromm's still the GOAT. He's at his best with, when receivers are playing their best. That's probably true. Greg Rosenberg says, I think Fromm can improve in his draft position next year. Be interesting to see what decision he makes. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting decision, and he's going to weigh in on that pretty soon. I'm very interested to hear, for sure. Salty Dog says he hopes he stays. I do too, Salty. I do. Let's get Zach Wimpy. Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Dallas Schwartz says, Zamir White took a little time getting wound up, but he seemed to get himself into a nice flow. Yeah, I think that's true. End of the season, a nice flow. I also think there's a chance that, and I'm not a doctor, gosh knows I'm not, but I think there's a chance that Zamir, just coming off 2 consecutive years with ACL injuries, I think there's a chance he's healthier now than he was at the beginning of the year. And I think there's a chance that he may be even healthier next season than he is right now. I think that's something to keep your mind on, that one of the reasons why he was better today than he was earlier in the year, he just may be in better condition. Those knees may be a little healthier. And to go back to something that Kirby Smart talked about in the offseason, there's a mental aspect to all this. You have to kind of trust your own knees and joints when you're planting on turf like this. It could be that his own confidence has grown and his ability to kind of handle all that. There's a chance that's true as too. The mental component of this has kind of improved for him. Let's see what else is going on YouTube, and we'll go to Facebook for one more run through all of this. A lot of folks talking obviously about the quarterback situation, kind of everything else that's going on there. Montez Cole also weighing in on Zamir White there as well. Camden Taylor on the situation of the Georgia running backs. And I know it can seem like this, Camden, that if you've got the potential of 2 freshmen coming in, still having James Cook, still having Zamir White, still having Kenny McIntosh, that seems like a lot. But I'm telling you right now, and we've seen this now in a lot of years for Georgia, it's very easy to blink your eye and all of a sudden a lot of running backs turns into just enough, right? I mean, Georgia wants 5 scholarship running backs, and Georgia's not bringing in a running back if it's not the caliber of a Zamir or a Evans or a Milton. That's the only kind of running backs that Georgia recruits. So the plan next season to have 5 running backs that we all kind of followed as recruits and kind of all have high expectations for, 5 of them is exactly what Georgia wants. And if it was less than 5, for instance, if Zachary Evans tomorrow makes some wild card name and says he signed with some other school besides Georgia, then Georgia really, at that point in time, doesn't have enough running backs. You know, for the rigors of the SEC, the intensity of these games, you need more than 4 running backs. So I wouldn't be so quick to say that the odd man out means someone's definitely transferring. I think, listen, we're in a modern age where a lot of folks are considering a lot of different things, but 5 running backs for SEC level of play is not too many, and Georgia only recruits elite guys there at that position. A few more Facebook comments. We're going to get ready to roll here on a big night for the Dogs, winning the Sugar Bowl. Huge performance for George Pickens. I could not be happier about that. But also proud of the defense, too. And really, something I'll remember as I make my way back to Atlanta tomorrow, the emotional way in which Georgia players seem to connect with each other over this game. Those that were here, it mattered to them. And injured players like Lawrence Cager and Dominic Blaylock. I didn't get a chance to talk to Dom, but I did talk to Lawrence Cager about this. This mattered to him, too. He wanted to be with this team tonight and wanted to be able to do that. And listen, I kind of rolled my eyes a bunch this week when Kirby Smart said we were focusing on who's here and who instead of who's not here. That sounded more like sort of George Orwell, 1984 type, talk to me. But honestly, when you watch the way the team played and when you listen to the way they talked after the game, it kind of was that thing that they really were playing for each other. The people were here. It meant something to them. And for the guys who were playing their last game, you better believe it really meant something to them. And I'll remember that part of this for sure. Chad Buchanan, maybe the smartest person in the comment section tonight, says he took a vacation day for tomorrow. That's pretty smart. John Jared Bailey may have all of us beat, though. He says that he's watching in Germany. It's already 7:53 a.m. So, John, you may have us beat for sure on that. That's well done. We appreciate you tuning in and hope that your second day of 2020 has gotten off to a pretty good start. Will Reeves, you're right. George Pickens can flat out ball. He's no doubt. Steve Schvini says he's awake and partying all night. Well, there you go, Steve. I love to hear that. Frank Montanaro says 2 a.m. in New York. Good. Thanks for checking in with us there from New York. Appreciate you being here. Trey Richmond, thanks for the kind words, and I really appreciate that, Trey. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Jay Squilla says that Matt Rule's coaches better than he spits. I put this video in the comments section. He spat on himself tonight during the game. It was not a good look. It was not impressive at all from Rule. That's the kind of thing that they won't tolerate in the NFL level. Not very becoming of an NFL coach. He was also, I thought kind of dressed kind of weird. He almost was like wearing during the game, like the kind of thing that you'd go pick your kids up from like car rider line in. The Georgia players, they entered the stadium all suits and ties. Everybody's kind of decked out. Baylor entered the stadium. There's nothing wrong with this necessarily, just a different way of doing things. In like jogging suits, track suits. They're a lot more casual, a lot more laid back. It was kind of interesting to see that. Santiago Diarn feeling good about Jake Fromm's performance tonight. Steve Schifini says, too bad that Rule's going to win 4 games with the Giants. Yeah, that may be a tough situation for him for sure, but he certainly seems to be a hot name there in that respect. James Crump brings up another game, and we'll talk a lot about that in the coming days, that Minnesota rode the boat against Auburn. Yeah, I was really surprised about that. Auburn was a team I probably liked this bowl season about as much as anybody. Now, for those of you who followed my picks all year long, you're not surprised that I lost a game I felt confident in, but as a 7.5-point favorite to see Minnesota, I should say as a 7.5-point favorite to see Auburn lose to Minnesota, it's a pretty impressive performance by P.J. Fleck. I got to give credit where credit's due there. I also thought Alabama had a nice day today, too, and I don't enjoy saying that very much. Dante Edie says Cade is a guard. I'm ready to see who's taking the other offensive tackle spot. So I think that Cade May is going to be a heavy part of that discussion for, and I'm assuming it's going to be the spot where he played tonight, left tackle. Coming out of high school, Mays was thought to be a tackle. Now, Jeff Sintel back during that recruiting process said that he thought that Mays could be an elite guard, and maybe he still has a chance to do that. But just given the personnel that Georgia's likely going to have next season, I think that Mays is going to get a very long look to be the replacement for Andrew Thomas as Georgia's starting left tackle, much the same way he was tonight. Nathan Edwards says, what if we just do Dog Nation Daily right now? That way we can all sleep in. It is an idea. I don't know if it's a good one, but that is an idea. Pretty good stuff. Couple more here, and we're going to get ready to get off the air. James Crump on the subject of what George Pickens did this year. Yeah, listen, I think it's actually a really huge success story. And I know it can be easy to kind of overlook it because of how bad the Georgia wide receiving situation was for the most part, and you can't sugarcoat that. That group had some real issues, and Kirby Smart was pretty candid in talking about that. But in the midst of that, in terms of freshman receiver performances, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in the country. And there's obviously a name that we all kind of know in terms of that comparison. I won't mention it out loud, but let's face it, we all kind of know here other freshman receivers who are out there. But when you look at Pickens' touchdowns, when you look at his yards, I mean, you're going to stack him up pound for pound with any receiver in the country. And I think that for Georgia to be able to produce those kinds of results, before George Pickens, it had been a long time before UGA had signed a 5-star receiver. So the fact that Georgia signed this one and used him effectively, and really Dominic Blaylock as well, Blaylock had a lot of touchdowns for Georgia this season, too. Georgia's 2 big freshman receivers, Georgia used them and used them well. And I think that sets Georgia up for the future. Now, Dom's case, he's got to come back from that knee injury, and that's going to be, a tough row for him, but we'll wish him well on that. He's a tough guy. I'm sure he'll come back better than ever. But the point is that for Georgia, who in the 2019 class had a major step up in weight class in terms of the receivers it recruited, it should get some credit for using them. Now, some of the veteran guys maybe didn't have quite the seasons you'd like for them to have. But Georgia used its freshman receivers very well, and George Pickens tonight in his 14th game shows you that he's a go-to receiver of the highest order when you start thinking about 2020. Pella Windows Postgame Show, they can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors, and they are a nationally known company. They've also got a locally owned branch right here in Georgia, so it means you get to the national resources, the big resource of a national company, but also the family-friendly service that comes from a locally owned company, and a couple different ways for you to get in touch. Take advantage of what is a great offer right now. 40% off qualifying installations or 0% APR for 48 months. But you've got to act right now. That deal only good through January 9th. So a couple ways for you to get in touch. Online at PellaBranch.com. That's PellaBranch.com. Or you can give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. That's 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. All right, we are really going to get off the air here. Let me do like one more on YouTube and one more on Facebook, and then we'll save it all for tomorrow's edition of Dog Nation Daily. A bunch of interviews and a lot more time to react on. What I thought tonight was a really fun night for UGA. So a couple more from you, and then we're going to get ready to get off the air here. Super Hecky on the subject of, Dominic Blaylock, Kieris Jackson, Jermaine Burton. Yeah, it's a nice collection of receivers on the way for Georgia here for sure. Mr. Wise says offense left a lot on the field as expected. Pickens plus new weapons is exciting to think about. But this defense is going to be great for many years to come. And, yeah, I mean, listen, obviously Georgia wasn't a completely different offense tonight than it had been all season long. But to have a individual receiver step up the way that Pickens did, I think that gives you a lot of hope for the future. And for the Georgia defense, knowing it was missing some of its key leaders, J.R. Reed, most significant amongst that group, a first-team AP All-American. The fact that the Georgia defense played as well as it did tonight, you will also feel good about going into next season knowing that group is right there exactly the way that it's supposed to be. One more here on Facebook. We're going to get ready to go. And thanks for all the great comments. Always really appreciate that. Thanks for allowing us to do this with you, even as late as it is. I just really appreciate that opportunity to be here with you for all of this. Gregory Mitchell says, I want to see DeJuan Mathis get a chance to throw that rock. Gregory, if you get a chance, go back and watch our second Kroger kickoff from earlier this evening before the game. We were able to show a good bit of video of Mathis on the field before the game began, kind of going through some work as a obviously not a fully active quarterback yet, but going through some warm-ups and having a great time doing it. He's on his way back to health, and he was loving being out on this field tonight. So if you like Mathis, you'll like that video. It's part of our one of our Kroger kickoffs, the second one we did about 30 minutes before the start of the game. Get a chance to see that there. Joey Smiley, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Joey also says that the Matt Luke performance may have locked in Broderick Jones, Cedric Von Prawn, and Amarius Mims. And, yeah, obviously maybe most prominent amongst those right now because Van Prawn sort of giving you an indication recently that he's still pretty strongly thinking about Georgia. But that Broderick Jones competition is going to be an intense one. And you'd love the idea that Jones tuned in tonight and saw the work that Matt Luke was able to do. You'd love to think that Georgia can utilize that relationship to keep this relationship strong with Broderick Jones. So really good comments. I'd love to see and read them all night long. We are going to go for now. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., we'll be back for Dog Nation Daily then. Thanks for being a part of our Pella Windows Postgame Show tonight, and thanks for being with us all season long for what has been an incredibly wild ride with good times, with not so good times, but a whole lot of fun in between. We appreciate you allowing us to be a part of it with you. And as so many of our commenters have said so many times today, it's not going to end because the season ends. Tomorrow is a huge day for UGA. Not just recapping the win against Baylor in the Sugar Bowl, but also thinking about the big announcement from five-star tight end Darnell Washington, five-star running back Zach Evans. We're all over that on the Dog Nation video channels tomorrow and on Dog Nation Daily as well. Heading towards Saturday with Keely Ringo, too. So a lot of recruiting news to be had over the course of the next few days. I am quite eager to cover all of it with you. So I'll see you tomorrow morning from New Orleans, tomorrow night back in Atlanta. A lot to do. But for now, let's celebrate a Georgia win over Baylor. Here's a part of the Sugar Bowl. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night, everybody. This has been the Pella Windows Postgame Show.